Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Thank you so much for joining us. Today, we're covering Cylance vs. Hacking Exposed. Hopefully, you were able to catch the first Hacking Exposed we did about a week and a half ago. Before I introduce the presenters, we're going to go over a couple of housekeeping items. Audio will sound best streamed through your computer. Please submit any questions you might have through the Q&A box. We are also asking if you have any ideas for future Hacking Exposed Think Beyond webinars to please put those in there as well. We will post additional resources throughout the webinar in the chat box, so look out for that. Your feedback is really important to us, so please answer all of the poll questions at the end of the webinar so we can continue to make these webinars informative and exciting for you guys. The links to this webinar recording and presentation will be sent to you in the next few days to your email, so look out for that. And if you have any questions or need any help, you can also reach us at that email listed there. And then today, joining us, we have our very own CEO and founder, Stuart McClure. He will get things kicked off for us. And then we also have Brian Robinson, who will be doing some of the demos for us later on in the webinar. Stuart, with that, you can take it away.
All right, thanks, Liz. Hello, everybody. Welcome again to another Hacking Exposed Live Think Beyond edition. In this one, we're doing a little bit, something a little bit different as well. So if you were here last 2 weeks ago, we talked about the ways that attackers use DLLs and sideloading and hijacking and sort of sequential bumping and things like that. So we're going to do the same attacks, but this time we're going to do it against Cylance and CylancePROTECT and Optics. And I'm just so excited about this one because, you know, a lot of people think that we are just machine learning on files type of protection technology, and nothing could be further from the truth. We've, since the very beginning of the company in the first version of the technology, we have had multiple layers of protection and prevention. So we're gonna walk you through a bunch of that. And Brian Robinson's just worked up some wicked cool demos. So you'll love it, I'm hoping. Well, the other thing I wanted to mention is Liz said, yeah, if you've got ideas, please send those in on the Q&A. Just as you go through the whole session today, if you've got ideas, just punch them in on the Q&A and we'll look at every single one and we'll try and orient it. Now, just to get your juices flowing a little bit, I think my screen share is working. I was gonna show you. You know, if you're not already subscribed to CyberWire, it's a really good daily sort of recap of all of the prior day's security events. So you can look at sort of the headlines and what's really tracking on stuff and send that in. Now, we do look at that from time to time as well. The other thing is we've been orienting quite a bit to the MITRE attack framework. So if you like this framework or another type of framework, and there are plenty of them out there, even Hacking Exposed obviously had one of the very first frameworks for attacking target networks and systems and applications. But if you have one that you really like, please send those in. We're all ears. There doesn't seem to be one sort of complete list, but we can tackle each category or each group however you want. And then we'll promise to do this every month, a Hacking Exposed Think Beyond, and then a Hacking Exposed versus Cylance, or Cylance versus Hacking Exposed. All right, with that, let's just get it rolling. So as Liz mentioned, I'm Stuart McClure. I'm CEO and co-founder of Cylance. We started the company in 2012. You can find me at Stuart McClure and at Hacking Exposed. And then I have Brian Robinson. Brian, say hi.
Good morning, Stuart. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for hanging out with us today. And I'll be back on a little bit later to play the DJ role and punch the keys on the keyboard.
Yeah, Brian has done, of course, all the heavy lifting. I have to give all the credit for this one, of course, to Brian. He's the one that sets up all the demos, makes sure everything works, gets it live, and I'm just the Vanna White. So, and not a good looking one at that, but we'll go for it. Okay, so I want to remind everybody that RSA 2018 is in full force, and of course, it's a zoo as always. If you're there, please come by to some of our events, but also we have a Hacking Exposed webinar called Next Gen AI Powered, and I really think you'll love this one. We're gonna have demos of Meltdown, or really more so Spectre. We're gonna show you how to exploit that in a really cool way. We're gonna reveal a new campaign that we've been working on for quite some time, and then we're going to talk about adversarial AI. It's one of the hot topics right now in the machine learning world and deep learning world. Is how will the bad guys use AI to get around us, the good guys that are finally getting ahead of the bad guys and preventing these attacks long before the bad guys think about them and ship them out. So I think you'll find this really, really cool. At least I hope you will, and I hope to see you there. All right, so why think beyond? I just want to take a quick second. I know I talked about this last time, but I think a rinse and repeat is always helpful. You know, Steve Jobs, I think, was one of the first that sort of helped really get this idea that you should try to think different. And I think what he was really trying to say is think for yourself. You know, think for yourself, because that's what changes the world. You know, groupthink doesn't change the world as quickly as thinking for yourself. So we've always said that as part of Hacking Exposed. We wanted to make sure that you all were empowered with knowing the truth about how the bad guys get in and how easy it is to defend and prevent these types of attacks. So more of the same, that's what Think Beyond is. So, you know, more layers doesn't mean more security. As many of you know, you probably have dozens of layers of security technologies, and it doesn't mean that you're more secure. What really matters is having the right layers and the most effective layers. And then the other myth, obviously, is compliance equals security, and that couldn't be further from the truth. So just because you're PCI or HIPAA compliant or SOX or SOC 2 or whatever doesn't mean that it's actually secure. And so it's something to just remember as you go along the way. But predictive prevention is possible. We've proven that now with Cylance, and we prove it every single day. I just got the latest numbers, how many preventions we've actually achieved since we started the company. We have almost 32 million preventions with CylancePROTECT out there in the field. So really exciting and cool tech that just seems to work, and customers love it. So we're certainly not perfect, and we want to improve all the time. So if you have ideas for that too, we're always welcome. It's always welcome. All right, so with that, we're gonna, you know, as usual, we take a very threat-centric view of prevention, not a compliance-centric view. So we're gonna talk about how these DLL attacks that were so successful last week in showing you in the demos, we're gonna show you how Cylance would affect it. And, you know, like I said, Cylance is not perfect. So if we miss something or we don't catch it the first stage, we might catch it second stage or something like that. So we're gonna walk you through all of that so that you get a really clear picture. All right, so the agenda for today, again, a quick recap of, the last 2 week Hacking Exposed. We're gonna talk about Cylance, and we're gonna do the demos, and then we're gonna rock and roll. All right, so quick recap of the Hacking Exposed edition. DLL devastation is what we called it, for lack of a better term. But we did that, just 2 weeks ago, actually to the day, so it's sort of a good timing. So real quick, what is a DLL? A DLL is simply a dynamically linked library of code. So it's code that loads into memory that is effectively a library of data of code that any other program can go and use and call. Most everybody, any other program. Now, DLLs are a threat because they are executable code. So if you can load that DLL into memory in any way, shape, or form, or have another app load it, it becomes then malicious, and it can do damage to your systems. And that's what we showed you last week, how easy it was to bypass, well, a lot of technologies out there today by simply trying to sideload DLLs. We talked about historically where this technique has been part of the play, but LSA Dump 2 was one of the early ones on Windows to dump the local security authority credentials, basically your passwords, encrypted passwords. OPM breach happened in that same fashion, the shell crew attacks, and then of course, current customers will see from time to time, had they not had the product on or in prevention mode, they would have been impacted. All right, and then of course we did hands-on. And the ways that we did it, so we directly executed a NotPetya type of ransomware using run DLL 32. That was sort of the easiest one. It's something you guys can test all day long. If you have access to VirusTotal, just go on up there, you know, do your usual query to find a type :PE DLL with whatever sort of engine tags you want, pull that down, and then sideload it. It's real easy with that, which is a native executable running on all Windows systems. And then explaining the inherent trust with run DLL32, and then some hijacking and sideloading examples. And then of course, well, all this is great when we're doing a demo on a system that we already have admin on or access to just prove that it all works. But how do you really weaponize it? We showed you how to do that with some existing campaigns like Hanseter, which used a malicious Word document to actually trigger a script that actually loaded up the DLL. All right, so, and then we talked about, well, what can you do to try and prevent stuff? And I always tell you that you don't need any technology, honestly. You don't need any sort of service or any of that stuff. If you just know what to look for and know what not to do or not to allow your system to do. But that is somewhat challenging for most people. So, you know, obviously technology helps a lot with that. All right, so Cylance versus HE. So the content, I think, for this one, and again, we're modifying this sort of on the fly. So if you have ideas, please put it in the Q&A, and we will attend to each one and try and address it in future versions. But the two technologies that we're going to highlight today as part of Cylance are CylancePROTECT and CylanceOPTICS. Now, CylanceOPTICS is our EDR module as part of Protect. It really is the telemetry system of the endpoint. It pulls all kinds of data, information, exactly what's happening on the system, what users are doing, what service accounts are doing, what anybody that has access or anything that has access running is doing, and we can record all of that on a secure partition on the disk, and then query that and then take action when we see detections that come up. So with the two solutions, we can get really, really powerful prevention and detection technologies and capabilities. And it can really, you know, save a lot. Like I said, almost 32 million preventions so far with the company, largely with Protect and now with Optics that's been released. All right. So how we're going to talk a lot about both the technologies, we're just going to call it Cylance rather than just say Protect or Optics. But if you think about where the prevention layers come into play, specifically, you can look at it from a Protect versus Optics sort of scenario where Protect has got, for sure, the ML-based PE and DLL pre-execution prevention detection. Of course, we have technology that is also, and that is triggered when it is executed or loaded into memory or tried to. Of course, we also have the ability to check when something is dropped onto disk and then catch that and prevent that. And we also have a background threat detection scanning, which scans the hard disk for any threats that are latent on the disk itself or any remote disk as well. We also have script control capabilities, which means that you can prevent scripts from running on the target, no matter where it comes from, whether it be PowerShell, JavaScript, or VBScript, or JScript, or you name it, all of those technologies. And then finally, which is something we've had since day one of the technology, is what we call our MEMDEF, or memory protection module, which is an exploitation module, which actually hooks started processes and then watches them for any sort of malicious behavior. And we can prevent that and then kill the running process on top of it if you want. And that's been very, very successful in stopping a lot of attacks. And then CylanceOPTICS, now we really have the full ability to look at pretty much every behavior and activity that a user or even attacker that gained access onto the system has the ability to, we have the ability to watch that stuff and determine whether it's malicious or not. Now, all the EDR solutions are largely signature based. They don't have any real predictive capabilities yet. But Cylance is going to be the first to do that. We have a release coming up in a couple months that's going to allow our customers to actually predict behavior before it occurs. So I probably need to go into a whole session just on how we do that, and we will around RSA timeframe and right after. So feel free to check in on that stuff. And if you want more information, hit me up on email or Q&A. All right, so all of the MITRE ATT&CK framework, for example, it's all, a lot of it is with Optics, not everything, probably about 80% are with Optics and about 20% is with traditional CylancePROTECT. All right, now we've got about 45 minutes left. This is perfect timing. I'm gonna hand it over to Brian. Now, what we wanna do is probably do about 30 to 40 minutes of demo, and then I wanna have 5 or 10 minutes of a Q&A at the end so we can answer any of your questions for things that come up throughout, okay? And I'll I'll pipe in from time to time, but I'll just let Brian take over and start with the fun and the fireworks. All right, Brian.
Awesome. Thanks, Stu. Appreciate it. And great lead into what we're going to be doing today. And as you talked about before, last 2 weeks ago, we showed a lot of how these things worked on completely unprotected victim systems. And today we're going to take a look at how Cylance can prevent these types of techniques and attacks. And we're going to be doing some pretty cool stuff. We're going to be doing some things with like full prevention turned on, and then we're actually going to flip over to the console and actually take away some of the early on prevention, like script control and things like that, and show secondary layers of techniques that we can use to prevent attacks. Very commonly something like the MEMDEF, like you mentioned earlier, Stu. So let's go ahead and get started, because this is going to be kind of fun. Some of these are somewhat kind of complex, and hopefully my rented fingers today are working well on my typing, and we'll be able to actually kind of execute some of this stuff without too many issues. As Stu said, the first thing that we're going to do today.
I did actually offer up a sacrifice to the demo gods this morning. So I hope it's enough, but we'll see. Brian, you're more than capable. So rock and roll.
Well, yeah, actually, I did as well yesterday. The second online Underworld tour event that we had last evening, I was preparing for this demo and left some interesting DNS entries in my host table and kind of screwed with the demo at that point. So we had to do a quick recap on that one. So I did my donation to the demo gods yesterday. So
well, that's how you know it's live and fresh.
Absolutely.
All right,
live and fresh. All right. So as Stu said, basically last time what we did was we demonstrated kind of the worst case scenario where we're detonating some nasty malware using just run DLL 32, and whether it's executed by you as a person or by a script or whatever, it's just, we want to demonstrate kind of what happens. So in this demonstration, we're going to basically take a look at that exact kind of scenario running on our victim host here. So let's go ahead and switch over to our victim. I got to move some things out of the way here just a fuzz. Okay, so we have over here on the left-hand side, just like we did a couple weeks ago here, we're going to use Metasploit here in a little bit, but we're not going to use it for the first portion of this. We're going to pretty much just use our Protect client here. And I've got several of these kind of stacked up. We've got some hapless victims that we're going to use a little bit later. But obviously we have, kind of our full-on, version here. We've got all the features turned on and cranked up. Everything's ready to go. Obviously we have all the tools installed, and so that we can see what it looks like. Now, also different from last time, Stu, I've got a Windows 10 demo system here. So we're showing, essentially these, similar attacks working against, not just Windows 7 like we used last time, but also the latest and greatest, fall creators update, plus all the latest patches and all that kind of great stuff.
Yeah, I'll just jump in real quick. Yeah, a lot of folks, I think even I myself sort of fall into this trap of thinking, well, gosh, Windows whatever XYZ version is got to have protected now against a lot of these attacks, and they have gotten much better. I mean, look, without a doubt. I mean, back in the day when I was hacking up Windows 95 and Windows for Workgroups and the early versions of Windows 2000 stuff like that. Of course, XP, those were like, sieves, without a doubt. And so they have shored up each and every release a bit more and more and more. And so it is getting better. But I think what we forget is there's still tons of these types of attacks that work still to this day, especially malware, and especially some of the living off the land type attacks. So Brian will show you.
Excellent. All right. So just like we did last time with our demo system where we ran the NotPetya DLL by hand, we're going to do basically the same thing. Now, I'm going to do this in a little bit different order because of some of those features that Stu mentioned before, something, for example, like File Watcher. If I copy the DLL over to the desktop and just let it sit there for a minute or so, we would basically queue it up. We see it we see it being copied over, and we queue it up for a low and slow detection at a later time when the system is less busy. So I need to do some of these things relatively quickly before, let's say, FileWatcher picks up on that DLL and quarantines it, if we're going to try to show, for example, the pre-execution engine stepping in and picking that up. So that's what we're going to do. And I'm going to go ahead and kind of pre-build my command and kind of get it ready for when I copy this file over. So, so we're going to go grab our sample.
I like this, the way you're doing this, Brian, because you're also sort of showing, look, you know, FileWatcher might take just a second or two to hit, right? So you want to try and maybe even bypass us. So get it in there quick and let's see what happens.
Yeah, and the idea here, you know, FileWatcher is one of those great things because we hear complaints from, you know, customers all the time about their systems grinding to halts with, you know, copying files over from the network share,
right,
or doing something else like that. And this is not how we operate, right? Like I said, we queue it up for a low and slow scan in the background at some point in the future, because an idle file is really no danger unless it attempts to be executed by either you or a service or PS exec or something else. If it's just sitting there on disk, it's really not that critical of a thing, and that allows us to give the performance of the machine back to that end user and let them use it, and we'll pick it up at a later time. So we're going to copy this bad boy over to the desktop, and we're going to attempt to execute it. And now here's what actually is happening when we see this. We see the pop-up in the bottom right-hand corner. Basically, I, as a user, have requested run DLL to execute this malicious DLL. The pre-execution engine has stepped in and basically determined that this DLL was malicious, it's going to do something bad, and therefore has taken it away from the execution process. And so what I get as a user is I get a weird access denied message or something like that, but basically that code has been taken away from the user or the process. So later when we start looking deeper into processes, you're going to see some weird things where some processes can't talk to other processes, or their process IDs are invalid anymore because they're already gone, essentially. So basically, what you'll see here is in our local console, you'll basically see that we quarantined that file. We saw it attempt to be executed. We quarantined it, and we've taken care of it. Basically, it's been removed from access on the system. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the file back over to the desktop, and we'll just leave it there. As we said before, FileWatcher is going to queue it up for kind of a low and slow scan at a later time. This time, we're not going to execute it. We're just going to leave it sitting there. And, you know, this can take a few minutes or whatever. But the important thing here is that, again, it's not doing anything bad because it's not trying to execute. And it's just a file sitting on the disk. So it's not really of any danger yet. Now you can see down here that Cylance is actually inspecting it. And within a few moments, it'll simply disappear off the desktop as it's been picked up and quarantined as a malicious file.
I think the important part here is you're absolutely right, right? These things are, they might be latent threats because they're sitting on the disk, but they're not active threats because they're not being executed. And the point of it all, and the way that we've architected the technology, is to be incredibly silent on the system and incredibly low in its system resources. I learned long ago, if technology is you know, too strong on the endpoint, users just will not use it. They'll shut it off. They'll turn it off. They'll ask their corporate network, you know, folks to get it off of there. So we had to be really invisible and but incredibly effective. And so that's what, if Brian was to show you the CPU, it would be basically zero the entire time usage-wise that he was showing the demo.
Exactly. And now what I'm showing here basically is, even though, if you remember from what we did before, one of the key indicators of Petya was that it installed a reboot task into the task scheduler for the system to reboot in about an hour. So obviously, not only did we, you know, delete the file and quarantine it, but we actually you know, prevented it from executing and putting its code in the task scheduler here to reboot the system. So
Right.
the system is essentially prevented. And, you know, Stu, I don't know about you, but every time I start messing with really nasty malware, I'm like, they get a little nervous when you start executing and testing code and things like that. So
Yeah.
hopefully we don't blow anything up today.
Well, it would be fun to watch, but no, not to have it that way. So
All
yeah,
right.
so the first one worked great. So Cylance picked it up both on disk if you waited long enough, or if you're trying to load it, side load it quickly, and bypass the firewall at your timing. Both ways. All right.
Yep, great. Okay, so the way we continued last time from here was we continued talking about run DLL32 and its inherent trusted state within the system. And we can make run DLL32 do all kinds of things that don't necessarily involve malware. And so this would be something that we would consider a traditional kind of a fileless type of attack, where we're executing script code and trying to get it to download droppers and things like that from other systems. And so we're going to go ahead and play with that a bit now. And so this is when we're going to start using Metasploit. So I've got Metasploit running over here on a Kali Linux box running in the same network. And we're going to go ahead and set up basically a payload web server over here that we're then going to tell our victim system over here to go attempt to download this code and execute it into memory.
Right. Yeah, and this was what was demoed, the second demo of last Hacking Exposed. So Brian's just going to set up the web server to deliver the content, the malicious content that we're trying to get the victim host to trigger on, to open up.
Yep. This just takes a couple of seconds. Again, you know, rented fingers. Hopefully my typing is working today. Okay, so
just want to
I typoed it.
Yep. All right. That's why you know it's live and fresh.
Yep. We're not watching videos today.
And just so you know, your window is coming down a little bit lower than it should. If you can pull up the bottom bar in your window, I think that would help.
Yeah, we'll do that here just in a second. Let's see if I can grab. It's trying to grab. There we go.
There we go. Much better.
All right, let's see here now. What is wrong with my typing?
Now, did you do, yeah, you said target 2. I don't know what target was, but it had an command.
Let's just redo this again. I'm sorry, folks. My typing worked perfectly in multiple rehearsals, and all of a sudden, for some reason now, I'm not.
Well, that's why I would always do the cheater sheet back in the day. I'd have this like copy and paste routine, like, and it made me look like an old man, but I didn't care.
Yep.
I can't remember every little character every time on the command line anymore. Yeah, I think you just forgot the set command on the target, but you're all good.
I could, yep.
All right, that looks much better.
There we go. That looks much better. Okay, so basically what we've done is we've started a web server over here on the Metasploit, and it's basically given us a PowerShell command that we can use to download this dropper and then, you know, infect essentially our victim system. However, over here we have, as Stu mentioned earlier, there's multiple levels of technology within Cylance, and one of them is script control. And so on most systems, you know, most normal user desktops and things like that, PowerShell and other tools that are extremely complex and capable aren't necessarily good things to have turned on kind of for everybody. So one of the things, if we go over here and we try to open a PowerShell console, you're going to see Cylance pop up over here on the right-hand corner with "we're blocking this" because we've actually disabled by policy the user's ability to access PowerShell. So obviously this command is not going to work out of the box because I, as a user here, don't have access to PowerShell. Now, one thing that Stu said is that we designed Cylance to be silent, and that doesn't really work well in a visual demo like this. So what I have done is I have cranked on like absolutely every visual notification absolutely possible within CylancePROTECT and CylanceOPTICS. So when we start doing things, we're actually going to see quite a bit of noise on the end user system that would normally, in a production environment, not necessarily have to be there, and not, you know, it's decided upon by the administrator who's deploying the system. Okay, so just like last time, what we've actually got here is we've actually got a command where we're going to trick run DLL32 into executing a JavaScript, which is then going to try to execute PowerShell to download this dropper file from our Metasploit server. So we got to replace this text over here with the unique text that's showing in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen from Metasploit. Now, remember, we currently have script control turned on, so that basically we don't have access to PowerShell. So what we should see when we execute this is actually all kinds of noise on the client system. So, okay, let's explain exactly what happened here. You're starting to see all kinds of interesting things happen. Again, like I said, I've kind of turned on all of the GUI pieces that you could ever see so that we have visual actions happening. Let's start down here. First thing that we actually have is we have script control enabled. You can see we attempted to launch the interactive console and that was blocked, okay? So we couldn't get in and type any commands on the blue PowerShell screen. Then we attempted to execute a command, an IEX command through PowerShell, and downloading that string, and of course that was blocked because we have disabled PowerShell. Now, additionally, what has actually happened here is we see some optics detections happening. So as this command was being executed, optics has actually stepped in and instrumented several different things. We're going to go pop over in optics and look at that here in a second. It's actually seen things like run DLL attempting to execute JavaScript. It's seeing JavaScript attempting to execute another shell. All these types of things are being instrumented, and I have the detections turned on here, and I've got some custom notification in here. So if these pop up, please call your SOC at 555-1212, right? So the administrator can customize these things. And so let's pop over and actually do something kind of cool. We're going to pop actually into the console and see these detections as they have appeared in the Cylance console. Now, you can see here we've got these different components launching on the different systems here. And you can see the run DLL JavaScript invocation, for example, a fileless PowerShell malware attempt because it's attempting to create a file in a temporary directory where it shouldn't. And that is very indicative of a behavior of a fileless PowerShell malware attack, as well as we see PowerShell attempting to download files through an HTTP browser.
Yeah, this is so cool. So now you can see all of the different levels of detections, and that optics would have, I mean, it did catch and then would have caught had it even been allowed by script control.
Absolutely. Now, so optics was told to attempt to kill these processes. However, because we have script control enabled, Protect actually killed them before optics could. So by the time optics said, hey, kill this process, these processes were already gone and were prevented because the PowerShell process actually never even really began. And so we can look at this at a couple of different levels, and you can see basically, for example, what happened here. So you can see command exe was then kicked off. It kicked off a run DLL32 command, and you can see the evidence of the command right here in the console that we attempted to execute. Now, Protect basically isn't instructed to kill the offending process as well as the parent process, but I have configured optics to respond that way. So optics, even though PowerShell didn't run because of script control, optics came by and basically cleaned up the mess. It killed the run32 DLL process, and then it killed the parent command exe shell, and that's why you saw the command exe shell on the desktop simply disappear. Okay.
Yep. I don't know if you have focus data on that too, but that would be cool to show if you have that.
I'll look and see if I've got that here in a second. But what we're going to do now, for example, I want to do this attack again, but I actually want to let PowerShell run. I want to just see what happens if we disable the protection capabilities in Protect to stop PowerShell from executing. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to our system, and we are going to actually change. And what we'll do, Stu, is we're going to request the focus data for those script control events that you just mentioned. We'll get the focus data. Right. We've got the focus data from the Petya-like DLL already here. We'll get the script control one.
Perfect.
Now, what we're going to do is we're going to switch the policy on this system from demo to demo script off, which is essentially an identical policy, except for script control is in an audit-only mode. It's only designed to audit tasks that are happening. It's not going to prevent access.
Right.
And then we're just going to kind of go over here, and I want to clean these up so that we can just see the next detections come in on a very clean console.
Okay.
Okay. We're going to bounce back over to our system. And what we're going to do is we're just going to tell it to check for a new policy update just to make sure that we've got the latest and greatest policy. And we'll check our about box, and we're going to make sure that we are running that demo script off policy, okay? We want to make sure that that policy has come down before we obviously attempt to run this command again. So we're going to go cut and paste our command into our command prompt. And we're going to simply do our neat little replace just like we did before, because we need to make sure that we're pulling the right component off of the web server. Okay. Now, let's double check. Let's double check and make sure that we do have access to PowerShell now. Yep, sure enough, there we go. Right? So as a user, PowerShell is now allowed. So what's going to happen here is Run DLL32 is going to execute the JavaScript, which is then going to execute PowerShell, and it's going to be allowed to run. So we may actually see it hit the web server over here on Metasploit. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, depending on how fast optics is actually going to step in and kill those offending processes again. So here we go.
Okay, boom.
And boom, once again, without Protect. So one thing you didn't see was the Protect pop up in the bottom right-hand corner. What you see are these additional optics detections that I customized and set up for this. But basically, optics, which is essentially a visibility and telemetry tool, has actually prevented a PowerShell JavaScript run DLL32 exploit from actually taking place. And once again, we'll pop back over to our console. You'll see we have 3 new detections. It only takes a few seconds for these detections to pop up into the screen, and we'll just refresh and we'll pull them up. But basically, again, you see the same kind of things happened here before, that happened before, but this time you're going to see some different things happen because optics is now going to be able to actually terminate everything, including PowerShell and the offending run DLL32 and the command exe and all the different components that are here.
Yeah,
so
awesome.
Once again.
Awesome sauce. Okay.
Yep.
Beautiful.
Cool. And now, so let's go see, we should have the evidence views, the focus views essentially for the script control events, and will give us basically a timeline of what has actually happened and where these things came from. So obviously this is the attempt to launch the interactive console that was denied. And this, again, is the malicious script that we tried to run. It's not malware, it's just a fileless type of attack. And we get a terrific view of everything that led up to the event, which was the actual prevention of the attack itself. And we can easily flip back and forth between all the different times. And you can see here, PowerShell was instigated from Run DLL 32. It launched PowerShell with this command in here. And the cool thing is now we can use this piece of evidence to then go search all of our other systems in our network for anything similar to this. So we can grab this command line and just create an insta-query directly from here and go hunting for that threat potentially on any other system in our network.
Yeah, that's awesome. So that works. So number 2.
It worked.
Worked as well.
Okay. Now, one thing I do want to do, because we're going to use the system a lot today, is I want to make sure that I do go switch the policy back to our standard blocking policy. And we will come back over here and make sure that we get our new policy back. Okay, we have demo back. All right. So, we're 2 for 2 now, right?
Yep. Let's keep the good going.
So those are what we talked about, and basically I probably should have come back to the slide deck to set up that second demo, but I just went right into it. Basically, we're exploiting the trust of Run DLL 32 on the system. Now, a little bit later, I have something, and Stu, you haven't seen this yet, but I do have kind of a cool one more thing demo where we're going to actually exploit Run DLL 32's trust a little bit later in a different way, and it actually does something pretty bad. And I think you're going to like it too.
You teased me with that last night, so I can't.
I know, but I actually have it, so it is kind of cool, and it is working. Okay, so
and just time check.
Now
we got about 5-10 minutes max, just time check wise. Okay.
Gotcha. All right, we're going to fly through this. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to hijack a legitimate DLL that is in the system, and we're going to trick the system into actually executing some code on our behalf. Now, we're going to come back and we're going to use Metasploit again. But this time what we're going to do, and I'm going to try to get through this relatively quick. Last time we created a DLL, and we're going to do the same thing here today. So we're going to create a DLL using MSF Venom, and I'm just going to type this in really quick here. And this basically allows us to create some code that is brand new today, that has never been seen before by any sort of security product or anything else. And we're basically just going to set it up. And we can build an exe, but in this case, what I'm going to build is we're going to output the file as a DLL, and we're just going to save it locally called bad DLL. This is exactly the same procedure we used 2 weeks ago to create a malicious DLL that we then launched on the system using Internet Explorer, right? We dropped that DLL into Internet Explorer. Internet Explorer then executed it because it thought it needed that DLL, and boom, the system was essentially owned and we had a reverse shell. So this time what I'm going to do is we're going to move the file, just like we did last time. We got to move it over to our Windows system here. We're going to copy our file over, and then we're going to set up our Metasploit console once again to essentially create that reverse shell listener that's going to sit there and listen on port 444 for that attack to happen. So we're going to create this real quick. Sort of a similar thing to before, except for we're setting up essentially the listener on this side, not necessarily a web server, but basically the queuing up the interpreter on this side to accept that call that's going to come from that malicious DLL.
Hey, while you're doing it, I got a quick question on the Q&A that I think is relevant here. So the question was, is there a web browser plugin for IE Chrome that blocks malicious script execution? I don't know of one. I mean, I certainly don't, but, you know, so by the way, like for me, I'm super paranoid. So I actually don't even enable JavaScript at all in the browser. So when I, you know, get a new box or a new browser, I just make sure I shut all that off and have it just prompt me so I can specifically go in. But if anybody does know of something that looks for, you know, signature-based type of malicious script executions, I mean, I'm all ears. But the beautiful part of the Cylance solution is that it'll actually catch it, even though it does get past the browser and tries to execute on the system.
Yep. Okay. So, what we're going to do here is we're going to use Internet Explorer, and we're going to basically hijack a DLL that it uses. And we're going to use IE shims, for example. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our bad DLL that we just created over here in our Kali Linux box, and we're going to copy it over here. And again, this is something I have to do pretty quick because, you know, FileWatcher is going to scan this DLL, you know, within a few moments of me doing this. So I have to kind of do this quick, and hopefully I can do it quick enough. But basically what we're going to do is we're going to rename IE shims, okay? And IE is not running right now, so it's not using this DLL. It hasn't tried to load it yet or anything else. And we're basically going to just take our bad DLL, we're going to copy it over here, and we're going to rename it the same name as the legitimate DLL, and we're going to launch Internet Explorer. Now, what should happen here is because it couldn't correctly launch the DLL it was expecting, Internet Explorer has stopped working and crashed. However, we also see that it did actually attempt to launch the executable DLL, and we picked it up when IE attempted to execute it. So before, you saw me execute a DLL by hand, but however, using a very simple hijacking technique such as this, you're just simply replacing a known DLL to this application with a bad one, and we just tricked Internet Explorer into loading our malicious code. The great thing is, CylancePROTECT stepped in and actually stopped that from happening.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Yep. It looks like it
and
worked.
It's gone. We have shims 1 here.
Yep. And protect.
Oop, we have shims, right? Yep. So now if we launch IE Explorer, the application works as normal, and it loads up the Cylance.com webpage like it should.
Right. Awesome. So number 4 down, that's number 3, I guess. Yep, number 3, that was DLL hijack. Okay, great. Keep going.
All right.
Oh, by the way,
now,
we got a couple questions here. So Optics showed errors for not being able to end the process because Protect already killed them. Is there a way to have the visibility to know that happened? Now, it should, we deleted those messages, but you could easily just keep them, and you should have the data in the history there to show that out, if that's what you were asking, I think.
I think the question, Stu, is more of like, is there a way that Optics would know that Protect is what killed that process? And I don't think it does, because of the kernel level mode that Optics is using to observe that. It just sees that process ID no longer exists. So you usually get kind of a generic Windows API error or something else. So it's kind of hard to see that without kind of knowing what's actually happening on the back end.
But we do have on our roadmap the ability to actually take both of the groupings of detections and blending them together. So at that stage, we should be able to do it. No problem.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's something a little bit new that I did want to show as well today. That was we didn't talk about it 2 weeks ago, but as Stu mentioned earlier, the MITRE attack framework. There are several different methods for obtaining persistence on a system using DLLs. And one of these is actually using a command called netsh. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go in here, we're going to pre-build our command again, because again, this is something that you got to kind of do fast when you're copying live malware to the system. But basically what we're going to do is we're going to use NetSH to essentially, we can add any DLL we want to NetSH. When, let's say, your VPN client calls NetSH or whatever, we can essentially create a stack of DLLs that are loaded at the same time that some other program would then call NetSH. Yeah. And so we're going to do that right now, and we're going to do it with something really horrible like our Petya-like. And so we're going to copy this over to the desktop, and we're then going to execute the command. And so here what we see is, because again, this is not a malicious, this is not a piece of malware, except for now FileWatcher has come by and quarantined that DLL. But basically we're picking up on the optics detection whereby NetSH is being told to load that DLL. And in fact, if we go back in and we try to execute NetSH, you'll see that it's now been configured to pull that DLL, but it can't find it anymore because Cylance has essentially made it disappear.
Oh, I love this one. I love the NetShell thing. Okay.
And yep. And so we have our detection in our console, and you can see here, we have a bunch of rules in optics that are around, MITRE persistence techniques and things like that. And again, you're able to view the details. You can see optics basically, successfully terminated. Again, it's told to terminate these processes when they come up. So you're able to see exactly what's happening. You've got full evidence here, all that kind of good stuff.
Awesome. Awesome sauce. Okay, cool. So that's that's number 4.
Yep. Now, on this next one, we're just going to speed up just a fuzz because I know we're running out of time.
Yeah.
I've got another system that is set up, and I grabbed the wrong one.
Why don't you set that up and I'll answer a quick question. So,
yep, go ahead.
Comment by Jonathan says no script works. I'm sorry, no script works pretty good, but it's kind of all or nothing. So you have to enable the sites you trust. That's true, and it's a total pain in the butt. But I've been doing it since JavaScript was added into browsers because I know how absolutely vicious the bloody thing is. It's the scourge of the earth, honestly. So I've just been so paranoid and not doing it. But now, of course, with Protect and Optics, I feel a little bit better. At least I've got belt and suspenders.
Well, that too, and Stu, we have a fantastic ability with script control now, where if you are signing your scripts and you are rolling out those signed scripts, you can actually check your developer certificate into Cylance, and we will allow signed scripts with your developer certificate to execute, even though PowerShell and scripting is disabled for normal users. And so that's a really cool feature to allow you to actually, execute IT scripts and things like that,
right,
but still deny, users cutting and pasting commands like we're doing here.
Yeah.
Okay. So fast forwarding, we have another system here set up, and I turned script control off because what I want to do is I want to show our friend Hanseter. And I think I just got an email from Daniel with this cool overdue invoice. And this is the same exact example that we used 2 weeks ago to show Hanseter taking out a system with what it does is it basically copies a system DLL, it starts that DLL because it's a valid system DLL, it suspends the process, injects itself into memory, basically injects itself into that process, and then executes code directly into memory. There's never any malicious DLL on disk, and no malicious exe at all.
I love this.
So,
yeah,
this one's cool. So what we're actually going to let it do is we're actually going to let the Visual Basic script run. So if you have macros in your environment, it's not something you can just turn off, like Stu commented here just a moment ago, because it does have some business value function, but you still want to have something behind it to protect it. Well, that's what Protect does. So we're going to enable the content, and what's going to happen here is you're going to see Word disappear off the screen.
Yeah.
And what has actually happened, we'll look at this really quick, is that we have actually seen, so we detected the script running, right? We allowed it to run, but we didn't block it. We simply detected it. Then we saw the process and basically Hanseater attempting to carve out space inside Word's memory. And so this is where memdef kicks in. This is anti-exploitation, memory defense kicking in and stopping the actual exploitation of this system. And if you remember, Stu, last time, the way to know Hanseater was actually running was we would have, we would have SBC hosts running as our local user name.
Right.
And of course, we always see here our system and network.
Yep. Awesome. Beautiful. Like it.
Excellent. Okay. So we talked about the weaponization like that. We did Hanseater again with, turning all that stuff, off.
Right.
Okay. Do we have time to see the one more quick thing?
I think so, because I can't get enough of this stuff. If you could do one more in like a minute or two, I think we're good. And then we'll, why don't you guys, if you guys have questions while he's doing this, just tee it up in Q&A and I'll go after it.
Yep. Okay. I will go fast.
Okay.
Now for this, we're actually going to throw this system away because we're done with it. We're going to bring up a hapless victim because it's very cool to actually see this kind of work on a victim system before we do it on a protect system, obviously.
Right.
Okay, so this involves two things. One is this tool that we have called Launch as DLL.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
This is one of my favorites.
And then we're going to go grab something. I like this one. This one actually is brand new yesterday. If you go on VirusTotal and you look up the hash for this, it's first known to the public world yesterday. 3:28, mid-afternoon. Now, you'll notice that hacks here is an exe. It's not a DLL. But what we're going to do is we're actually going to exploit run DLL again by converting hacks.exe into a hacks.dll and tricking run32 into executing it.
Yes.
Now, the reason I like this one is because, oh my God, this thing is so fast. Okay, so we have to do this. We're going to tee this up. And I've done this a couple of times, so I know what I have to do here to kind of tee this up. Now, what we're looking for here is you can see we have a run DLL32 running right now as system. That's normal behavior. So what we're going to do, we're going to bring up our command shell. And I got to move it down here because it's important. I'll show you here in a second. So we're going to use launch as a DLL, and we're going to tell it to execute hacks.
Right.
And this is fast.
That's fast. Wow. Yeah, yeah. Well,
Okay. Now, the reason I moved the windows around is you can see what happened here below. Basically, what happened is launch as DLL basically created a hacks.dll out of the exe. And then it attempted to run it with run32 DLL, just like we do all of our other ones manually.
Right.
Now, over here in the task manager, you'll see copies of run32 DLL running in user mode. They're running as my username. That's not cool.
Yeah.
That is very not cool. You also do not see up here a hacks.exe running. So we didn't actually execute the exe.
Yep.
We created a DLL and tricked the system into executing the DLL.
I love it. I love it.
So that's a fun one. Let's go take a look at that one real quick as we finish out. While there's a few more questions and things coming in,
Yeah.
let's go again, just kind of show this.
Yeah, you set this up and get ready, and I'm just going to give a quick backgrounder on the launches DLL thing. So this came from a couple months ago, and I was like, man, why can't we just take any executable and launch it as a DLL? Like, it just seems like a no-brainer to me. It should just be, the core code of the executable put into a DLL, in one resource, and then you just call the resource. So I had the team internally build that little tool, Launches DLL, which I've never seen out there in the world, but maybe if you guys know of one like that, let me know, but it's really, really cool. All right, so go ahead, Brian.
All right. So again, we got to be quick with this because FileWatcher may pick up on this system. Obviously, FileWatcher doesn't see anything wrong with Launches DLL because it's already been here for a while. So we'll drag hacks over.
Okay, and go.
And execute it. And basically, you'll see very quickly that, we've got all the good stuff happening here on the client.
Sweet.
We attempted hacks exe, hacks DLL was created and was attempted to be executed, and it's now gone. It's all gone off the system.
I was legit nervous at that moment, like legit. I was like freaking out, like, oh man, are we going to see this thing pop? Okay, so I'm so happy. Thank you so much, Brian. You did an amazing job. You switch back to the deck. We're at the Q&A section. If anybody has time, we've got a minute or two to give us any questions. We do have a great suggestion for next time, Brian, from Adam. He says, can you give a demo on how Cylance can detect crypto mining or prevent user from getting crypto mined on an unwilling user? And yeah, that's a really, really common scenario for us. Like when we get called in with somebody that is not a customer yet, and we'll do a compromise assessment with our services, or we just roll out our technology, CylancePROTECT and Optics, we'll catch a lot of boxes that are crypto mining. So it's easy for us to go and clean that up with the technology or with our services teams. And we'll give you, that's a great idea. We'll do a crypto mining demo maybe as part of something else.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also saw one, maybe we should do a Mac OS hacking exposed too someday in the future. We'll think about that as well.
That's an awesome, yes, of course. Mac OS, we got to do that. Maybe even Linux if we want, right? So,
yep.
And then can you release the video for this? My colleague missed it. Yeah, to release it for sure. And hopefully your colleague isn't a friend of a competitor, but that's fine too. We love to educate the world. But the bottom line is, yes, it'll be ready, I think, in a day or two is our typical turnaround, and we'll have it out for you guys. So we're sending out
And also, if you're interested in seeing the webinar that we did 2 weeks ago, that's on our website already as a on-demand version. You can go get that and pass that around internally as well.
Awesome. And we do have the polling going out right now. So real quickly, I'll tell you, I'll let that run and maybe answer one more question here. Amazing demo pitch, Brian, and happy to see Mr. McClure. Yes, I agree with the amazing demo pitch, Brian. You did a great job. Thank you so much. Okay, James says, how might admins see or assess false positives? How many false positives Cylance often get? So it's incredibly quiet, not just the core technology, but also the optics detections. You really have to just try it to believe it yourself and see it for yourself. Let's see. Mason raised his hand. Oh, Mason, I'll allow you to talk. Okay, are you ready to talk? Hopefully you are. Hold on. All right, Mason, did you raise your hand on purpose? All right, maybe he didn't. All right, let's see. Wait, no, unmute. Mason, you there? All right. At any rate, let's just give you the poll questions. We had Cylance has protected against false attacks since. Did you know this? So a lot of people didn't know it. 55% did not know that we had fileless attack prevention with CylanceOPTICS module. Living off the land attacks. Did you know this? 62% no. So that's pretty consistent, I think. And then we're going to, at RSA, talk about machine learning models on behavior, which you're going to RSA, see it. Okay, cool. So about 75% are going to go see that, hopefully at our booth. All right, with that, I know we're already over on time. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Thank you, Brian. I'm not worthy, again, and really appreciate everybody's work on it. And then, last question, any plans to incorporate optics and protect in one software package? Yes, that's actually on track for mid this year, so summertime. So you should see it. Anyway, that's it, guys. Thanks again for an awesome show. We'll see you in May. Okay, not in April, but in May. Thanks so much. Take care. Bye.